Anyone who has a 2-year-old knows that the kid is running around all over the place trying to find out what the name of everything is. What's that? And you can help them, and you can read to children and show them pictures, and they're all fascinated with it. There are periods of very rapid language growth where you just can't satiate the curiosity fast enough.
Amazingly so.
It's unbelievable, in fact. What actually happens is really astonishing. I mean, there have been, for example, at the peak periods of, forget the structure of language, which is complicated enough, but just take vocabulary acquisition, the simplest part. At peak periods of acquisition of vocabulary, learning new words, children are picking them up at maybe a rate of 1 an hour or something, which means that they're essentially learning a word on one exposure. If you think what it means to learn a word on one exposure, the way to understand how amazing an achievement this is to try to define a word. So suppose you had an organism that wasn't equipped to learn the words of human language, and you really had to teach it those words by training. Well, you'd first have to define a word. What is the meaning of table, for instance? Nobody can do that.
You have to define the definition you're using to define the word.
But you see, what we call definitions are not definitions, they're just hints. If you take the Oxford English Dictionary, the one you read with a magnifying glass, and they give you a long, detailed thing, which they call the definition of a word. In fact, it's very far from a definition of a word. It's a few hints that a person who already knows the concept can use to understand what's going on. But remember, the child is picking that up not from the Oxford English Dictionary with its whole array of hints. The child's picking it up from seeing it used once or twice. Now, that can only mean one thing. It can only mean that the concept itself, in all of its richness and complexity, is somehow sitting there, waiting to have a sound associated with it. Now, that can't be quite true, but something very much like that is probably true. That's why you and I will have essentially the same concept of table and the same concept of person and of nation, or all sorts of things. They're not complicated things. I mean, really simple things like person, for instance, or thing. We'll have that even though we all have very limited experience, because basically we started with those concepts.